for having me as your guest. First of all, I must give a few caveats. I'm not a migration specialist, so I have very little to say about migration per se. I'm a political scientist, so I'm going to comment a bit about some of the political aspects of migration and maybe some policy issues that we could discuss. And I'm going to try to keep it within 5 minutes, so bear with me. First of all, I like what Ari said about who's a foreigner, or problems of definition. And looking at this book, I've also been trying to figure out who the foreigners are. There are a few different case studies according to different chapters. Sometimes the foreigners could be your own nationals within your country who aren't residents in that city. And there was a chapter I thought which was very interesting on China, where there are an estimated 200 million migrant workers. So these are migrant workers within the country who are not really welcome in the places where they work, and they don't have educational, social, and sometimes even voting rights. And I think this is quite a major problem, and it's an issue, of course, which exercises a lot of us who do migration studies, even within a country. So I tried to think about how we could classify foreigners, and Ari has suggested a few. So the focus of this book tends to be, I think, what I would call migrant workers, and most of these migrant workers would be the blue-collar workers. When we say, are there too many foreigners in Singapore, I think the local context seems to be, we also were talking about another category of foreigners called the foreign talent, which is an extremely politically loaded word nowadays. And this foreign talent, if we take it in the global context, it's about highly skilled professionals. Professor McKenna suggested that migration is something that's going to be a fact of life, as part of globalization, and it's something that can't be stopped. And if we look at the economies and the way even the developed countries have structured their economies, I would agree that there's very little that they can do, because they need to continue to have these highly skilled professionals, whether they're the economies of North America, or Western Europe, or the developed economies of East Asia. These economies are actively trying to attract the best talent in the world. They could be doctors, they could be other healthcare workers, nurses, physiotherapists, they could be bankers or lawyers, entrepreneurs, people who set up businesses in your country, people who might even settle in your country and bring in lots of money. And some countries, of course, would impose minimums in terms of the value of the business, the amount of money you need to bring in. So there are these highly welcome foreigners who are still foreigners but highly skilled or bring in a lot of capital. And then there are the permanent residents or green card holders, or they call different things in different countries. And these do not give up their citizenship in their home countries, but have certain rights in the receiving countries. They might even have voting rights. They also have the right to pay taxes or not to pay taxes in the countries of origin or the destination countries. And then I would say there are a category which I would call the future citizens, which before they become citizens, they could be in one of these other categories. I mean, we've just had a landmark case of a Filipina who's given the right to have citizenship in Hong Kong, and I think this is going to be an extremely hard-fought case. There's a lot of people who are fighting against this right now. And finally, and this is also discussed in the book, the case of illegals. So people who do not fit neatly in one of these categories and are either on the run or are not recorded. And of course, we know that this is a big problem in many countries in Western Europe. We know it's a problem in the US, and it's increasingly a problem in some countries in Southeast Asia, especially in Malaysia. So one question about would ask what policy responses we could draw from this book, or we could discuss, or maybe we could critique some of the policy responses of governments. One policy response which was talked about very much in this book is anti-immigration sentiment, and because of the way voters have expressed their happiness, governments have decided to clamp down on immigration, and I think this is something which is a big debate in Western Europe. I think two of the other panelists suggested that we talk about €1,000. We know that this is a big issue in countries like Italy and Spain, and it's beginning to be a big issue. Well, actually, it's always been an issue, but it's becoming more politically important in Germany, in the UK and France, and in the Netherlands. So much so that in some countries, such as in France, President Sarkozy has actually decided on forced deportation. Now, this is, some people think this is not a real response to a policy issue or policy, it's a gimmick for electoral purposes, and it's a way of making concessions to right-wing parties, where one particular group of foreigners is targeted, in this case the Roma or the Gypsies, and they were arrested and possibly deported. I'm not sure possibly deported to where. Now, this became a big issue because the Gypsies don't really have a country that they belong to, and they are found all over Europe. And I think there were some people, NGOs and other, even the European Commission was making noise that this was against the European Charter of Human Rights. So, migration, deportation, dual citizenship, all these issues, I think, are stuff which we could discuss, and they elicit all kinds of policy responses, and we all have opinions on them. And I think finally, when we talk about foreigners becoming citizens, maybe two things which have happened in Germany, I think, are also worth discussing. The idea, of course, traditionally in Germany is you can't be German unless you're born German. But how are you considered as having been born German? And this is something which countries such as China, Japan, and Europe, as discussed in this book, have been grappling with, because they only want one kind of migration or immigration, and that is immigration of people deemed culturally close, or preferably ethnic Japanese from from China or Peru or Argentina, those who went to Latin America in the 19th century. And of course, Koreans have a hard time finding ethnic Koreans anywhere in the world, except for some parts of China. And the Chinese would like, of course, some ethnic Chinese to migrate, but I think most ethnic Chinese outside of China are doing better than in the home country, so thank you very much. So these are some of the problems that countries are facing. And the other, even Germany has moved from this idea of jus sanguinis to jus soli, where you give the right of citizenship to people who have been born in the country. And of course, this is a major political issue, I think, about 10 years ago, when the law was changed in Germany so that people of Turkish descent who have been living in Germany for generations, they were there as guest workers. They were given the right, or given the option to take up German citizenship. So I think all these issues, I think, are interlinked, not just about short-term migrant workers, but also workers or foreigners in our midst that could become citizens. And then I think finally, the third point I would like to make is, I don't think migration is such a modern issue. I think migration has been about for a very long time. I think if we look at the ideas by authors and Graham Thompson in the book Globalization in Question, we're forced to think about migration. If you think not just in the last 50 years post-World War we think about like migration in the last few hundred years, then actually the great age of migration has passed. The great age was really the 18th and 19th centuries, when people moved across continents and they populated what was to them New World. Europeans thought they found a new world